Hello, college football fans, and welcome to episode 117 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined, as always, by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans and Husker fans. It's getting down to the wire.
Sure is. For those of you joining us for the first time, this is College Football Throwdown, a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. We're father-son duo here to talk about our favorite team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, as well as the wider things going on in the world of college football. And Nebraska had a bye this week, so it'll be more on the national side of things before we preview our upcoming game against Wisconsin. And Dad, today you are actually outside because you needed to try to get some better signal at your campsite, so that's why the listeners might hear a little background noise.
I'm sitting outside my RV, enjoying the beautiful Phoenix weather.
All right. So to dive into things, we're going to begin with our tradition of cracking open a cold beverage on both sides. Today I have a Modelo to crack for us.
Ooh, one of your Uncle Joe's favorite beers. You love the old Modelo. And I'm drinking just an old traditional Miller Lite. I'm going on a diet, so I got to watch my calories.
There you go.
But I still want a cold beer. Here we go.
All right.
Ready?
Cheers.
That tastes good, actually.
All right. So to dive into things, on the previous week's podcast, we gave our usual predictions for some of the upcoming games. And the big game that we were interested in was the Michigan-Penn State game. I actually got some work done in my car recently, and as part of that, they gave me 3 months of SiriusXM for free, which worked out kind of nicely because I traveled to this video game tournament this weekend that was about an hour away, so I actually used that to listen to the end of both the Baylor game and the Michigan Penn State game. So I got that on the radio and then watched some highlights on YouTube to get a sense of the game. But both of us predicted that Michigan would win, and I predicted 35-28, whereas you predicted 27-17. And the final score ended up being 21-17, so closer than either of us were expecting, and Michigan had to kind of find a way to pull ahead there in the fourth quarter because they were down near the end of the game. Right.
Well, and again, a little bit like the Michigan State game. There was points in the game where you thought Michigan was on the verge of taking control and really probably should have, but then didn't. And then let Penn State hang around, and then it looked like maybe Penn State was going to, use the crowd and the energy of that to be successful and pull off an upset, but they didn't.
Yeah. Well, frankly, I think actually it might have been a little bit reversed because Penn State ended up kicking multiple field goals in that game. And actually, there was special teams was quite important because right at the beginning of the game, they were stopped. It was like a 4th and 6, and they went on their first drive of the game, and they went for a trick punt that worked, that got them a first down, kept that drive alive, and they still got stopped like in the red zone. But then they kicked a field goal, went up 3-0. So they scored 3 field goals over the course of the game, and there should have been a 4th one because there was another time where they were stopped in the red zone, went for the field goal, and then they tried another trick play, but that one got swallowed up.
Yep. Well, and my point is that early in that game, though, in that first half, there was a point in time where Michigan could have easily been up, a solid 10 points if they had made some better decisions. I really blame the coaching and play calling on the Michigan side seemed pretty bad. And frankly, then on the Penn State side as well, I think both coaches outcoached themselves a little bit in that game.
Made it a little too complicated, you think?
Yeah, well, like going for that. If you're going to go for it on 4th down near the goal line, instead of doing a second fake first you did a fake punt, and then you come right around the next opportunity and you do a fake field goal, right? And if you're going to do that, I would have rather just called 2 plays, knowing, if you knew you were going to do that, which a decision like that is usually made quite a ways in advance. Like that's part of the game plan, right? Well, then just line up, run 2 plays, and see if you can score a touchdown, if that's your plan, and then plan on holding them back. If you turn it over on downs, kind of thing. Uh, it's early in the game, so I don't have a problem with going for it on fourth. I think the problem was trying to do a fake for the second time in the game.
Right. Since it worked the first time, of course, they're going to be a little more on edge, watching for a fake the second time. So yeah, I would agree with you there.
Absolutely.
The other thing that stood out to me was that Michigan's defense was getting a lot of pressure on their quarterback and sacked him several times. Forced him to turn the ball over, I think, once or twice as well. But Michigan's offense kind of struggled to capitalize on some of those opportunities until like I said, right late in the fourth quarter. I think there was only like 4 minutes to go or something like that. And then they got this big, like 70-yard play for a touchdown that brought them up to 21, and that ended up sealing the game for them.
Right. Exactly. But you know what? Here's the thing. They're a team that has, that we almost beat, maybe should have beat. Michigan State beat them. I mean, they have had their struggles, and yet here they sit, now with only one loss and staring down the barrel of, if they can avoid the hiccup game at Maryland, they're going to be competing with Ohio State for the Big Ten East championship and the likely Big Ten championship, with a top 10 matchup and the whole nation watching.
Mm-hmm.
And their team isn't any better than ours, except for special teams and coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I'd quite go that far, because obviously they do have some physical talent that we don't have. But
oh yeah.
Yeah, but I get your point. But I mean, both these teams, Michigan and Penn State and Oklahoma, who we'll talk about later, we were within striking distance of beating all those teams.
Right.
So, one of the other games that was big from that particular week, as I mentioned, was Baylor versus Oklahoma. Baylor was coming off of a tough loss the previous week to TCU, and we were talking about how devastating that was for them on last week's podcast. Meanwhile, you had undefeated Oklahoma playing in that game. And it was quite an ugly game. Both teams turned the ball over early on. It was 0-0 after the first quarter. Both teams missed field goals, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it was only 10-7 by the beginning of the fourth quarter, which, for the two of the best teams in the Big 12 is quite unusual, right? So yeah, it was a bit of a weird, sloppy game. 2 turnovers by each team. And special teams turned out to be a big factor, because those missed field goals by Oklahoma really would have come in clutch later on.
Yes, absolutely. No, it was not what we would call a typical Big 12 game.
No, definitely not. And brutal for Oklahoma. We'll talk about the full playoff rankings a little more later, but they were, I believe, 8th previously, and now they've dropped down to 13th. So they have definitely a tougher road to getting into that playoff discussion than they did before, now with this loss.
Oh, yeah. No, it's almost, I mean, it's not statistically impossible, but it's legitimately impossible at this point, I think. In 2 weeks, no. Too late.
Yep. We'll have to see. They play Oklahoma State at the end of the year as their rivalry game, and now Oklahoma State's ranked above them. So they really need to win that one if they want to still have a chance.
In a little bit, they probably will. They probably will.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. They're a team that's dodged a lot of bullets this season, kind of come close to losing but found a way to pull it out, like against us or other teams earlier in the season. they didn't look that great, which is why, even though they were undefeated, they were ranked pretty low by the playoff.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
Some other interesting games from this past week. Texas A&M played against Ole Miss, with Texas A&M being ranked a little higher. They actually lost 29-19. And similarly, Auburn played against Mississippi State and lost 43-34. So some shakeups in kind of that middle range of the SEC.
Right, right. Well, and now Ole Miss is looking. I mean, they're trending in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Meanwhile, Auburn, after getting some nice victories in the middle of the season, is kind of back to looking like crap. So yeah, it's gonna be tough for them.
Yeah, it is. Well, and it was the classic Alabama playing New Mexico State this past weekend. So they basically have a bye week late in the season, and playing somebody like New Mexico State is almost better than a bye week because you actually get a scrimmage in, and you get to play a bunch of your second, third team guys over the course of the game, and you hold out people who are banged up, and call them injured, and let your future players rise to the occasion, and then you move on down the line to your rivalry game, coming in strong and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing that for years, and this is no different.
Yep, it's true. It's true. And it's clearly worked for them over the years. And the big surprising upset was, of course, Texas versus Kansas. That one actually went into overtime, and Kansas won on the 2-point conversion at the end of the game to win 57-56 over Texas. Quite a shocking game where Texas really played bad. They had 2 interceptions back-to-back at the end of the second quarter that led to Kansas getting 14 easy points, basically. So it was 35-14 at halftime.
Wow.
Did you end up watching that game?
I watched parts of it, but then I turned away from it, and then only later saw the score. So, but your Uncle Mike and his wife were there, because of course they were there to follow KU. So he was like, "That's not a bad game to watch."
Yeah, well, he must have been happy because, although their defense did give up, obviously Texas came back and eventually tied it up, and so their defense did give up a lot of big passes, left guys wide open at times. But also getting all those turnovers, and they got another turnover right at the end of the game, in the end zone. I'm pretty sure right next to it. They got a turnover as Texas was going to tie the game, and there was only 1 minute left in the game. So it's like if their offense comes out and just gets 1 or 2 first downs, it's game over. But apparently they came out and just 3-and-outed and had to punt again, and that's where Texas was able to score with 40 seconds left or whatever to tie it. And so I think it was probably smart by their coach to go for 2, because he knew that Texas was the more talented team, and he had to stake it all on that moment.
Right. Well, and Texas at home, right? So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll always celebrate a Texas loss over here, being Nebraska fans. I was surprised to see how empty that stadium was, and some of those the footage I was seeing. Admittedly, it was near the end of the game where I noticed it, so some Texas fans might have been disgusted and just left earlier on. But yeah, that was a bit shocking.
Well, and they did. I mean, it was more full than probably what you were looking at, but the fact is that, yeah, I mean, they're losing their fan base far more rapidly than we've lost ours, because our deterioration has been over a much longer period of time than theirs.
Well, I mean, it's been like a decade for them now, in fits and starts, admittedly.
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They're they were in national championships in that 2005, 2006 time frame, And then after that is when things started kind of getting weird, and they started on their roller coaster of coach after coach after coach, just like us.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Um, and of course, the other game that we gave a prediction for last week was our upcoming opponent, which is Wisconsin. They were playing against Northwestern this week. And I predicted that Wisconsin would win 31-14 over Northwestern. You predicted a little closer, 28-17. But it ended up being a pretty lopsided affair where Wisconsin won 35-7.
Right. Well, and I thought Northwestern would, do their typical thing, but they're still, they just haven't yet been able to turn around the corner. They're still struggling.
Yeah. Well, and obviously Wisconsin's defense was all over them for most of the game. Though they did Northwestern on the opening drive of the game, they drove it down into the end zone. And then, of course, had to throw an interception in the end zone to Wisconsin. So that's 7 points off the board basically right away.
That they didn't get.
Yeah.
Right.
Though ironically, Wisconsin did the same thing later on in the game. They also threw an interception in the end zone. And Wisconsin had 3 turnovers in that game, which you'd think they'd lose with. But Northwestern had 4. So
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It was just that it was not a very well played game. It was ugly, and that's what I mean. Like usually by this time of year, Fitz has got his team operating at a efficient level. Maybe not at the highest level in terms of athletic performance, but in terms of minimum mistakes and executions at a decent level and that sort of stuff. And then they're just getting beat by better players. But he hasn't even been able to get that going this season. So it's going to be really interesting what happens. But I'm going to predict that, knowing his history, things are going to go really well next year for Northwestern.
could be. One thing that I noticed, a player to definitely keep our eyes on in our upcoming game is their running back, Braylon Allen. He had a great day against Northwestern. Looks like one of those guys who's really hard to tackle because he's just so strong. So that's definitely that, and their Wisconsin's really good defense are my 2 big worries.
Well, and I think Wisconsin's quarterback probably has settled down and is playing better football than he has before. He's been much maligned quarterback, but I have a feeling that he's starting to figure it out, and the game is slowing down a little bit for him. And I just, I don't know if we're ready to start talking about our game, but yes, I'm not seeing very many positives to take out of it for Nebraska. I'll just say that up front.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into the preview for our game a little later. But it's not looking great. I would agree with you there. Some other interesting news on the national side of things. On the coaching side of things, Virginia Tech fired their coach. I believe it was just like yesterday or 2 days ago. And UConn hired NFL coach Jim Mora. I believe he was also at UCLA in the past.
That is correct. He was. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So some shakeups there. And also there's...
Oh, and if I may say something. So Jim Mora for UConn, that's a heck of a hire. Okay. If you're the University of Connecticut, you have some good history. There have been some periods of time where you had a good football team for your league, and that sort of thing. Never really significant nationally, but within your league and stuff, they had some success, but they have mostly struggled. And so for them to get a guy like Mora, this is a guy who's obviously trying to rehabilitate his reputation and build back, so to speak. He's, I think, still a young enough guy that if he were to be successful here, he could then translate that into a bigger job. So you got a guy like that who has the chance to maybe enhance your recruiting, build a little more talent into your team, and if he can put together a decent staff, because his dad was an NFL coach for many years, so I mean he's got all kinds of connections, so he'll be able to put together a good staff. So,
Yeah, seems like a good hire for them. These coaches that fail in the NFL, but then come and, can have more success in the college level, sometimes it's just kind of a bad match, right? Like that's the deal with Saban, right?
right, exactly.
One interesting thing, this is not confirmed, it was just reported, but apparently Michigan State is looking to do a contract extension with Mel Tucker to up his money to $8 million a year to keep him at Michigan State, because he's been, in these rumors about who's going to take the LSU job or the USC job and things like that. So seems like they're willing to put down the big bucks to try to keep him there.
Yep, and that's what it's going to take. Now, the thing is that I wonder if Mel is going to take it, because if anything, I'm speculating here that will cause his representation to try to put some pressure on LSU or anybody else who might be considering him, and say, hey, you need to get on the stick here and let us know where we stand. It's forcing some other people to kind of shit or get off the pot, right? They're going to have to make an offer, or at least quietly give them a verbal offer saying, yes, you're our guy, you're the guy we want, and we're willing to, pay that kind of money. Because I still think that if LSU came a call and offered him $8 million a year, just like Michigan State's offering, I think he'd jump at the chance to get back into the SEC, but I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we'll have to see. There's a lot of, it's surprising that USC fired Clay Helton right pretty early in the season, and to my knowledge, there's been no confirmations of anything. So, they're really waiting to get the guys that they want, it seems.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the weird part about firing somebody early, unless you have a plan and a target that is not currently an active coach, meaning a recently retired coach, or somebody who's kind of off, as being an analyst, on TV, and you're ready to jump at him, or he's an assistant coach that is your guy, and you're going to go get him and promote him to head coach. Something where it's a real easy yes. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, why fire your coach and create all that disruption and potentially risk your recruiting class? Let that guy continue with his efforts. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's a little bit like Nebraska firing all their offensive assistants, in the middle of the season, like they did right after Scott's announcement.
Well, not middle of the season. We've got 2 games till the end, so we're at the end of the season. But
you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. Clay Helton, it's near the end.
Clay Helton was fired after game 5 or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, or even earlier. Yeah, I felt like it was game 3, but maybe it was game 5.
I don't know. Yeah, it was early. Speaking of Nebraska, there's been some interesting news about us in the bye week. And of course, there's been lots of discussion about Scott's new contract and the fact that he'll be staying on for another year, et cetera, et cetera. Jojo Doman, who's probably our best player on defense, is officially sitting out these last 2 games. Apparently he's getting hand surgery. And this wasn't too big of a shock, because we kind of suspected he might do that to try to hold off any further injury and prepare himself to try to go to the NFL and things like that. So makes sense for him as a player, right. But it does hurt us quite a bit.
It hurts us a lot. That guy was all over the field. He was instinctual. He was leading the team in tackles. I mean, the guy, well, he wasn't leading the team, but he was right near the top. The guy's a stud for us. And we're going to miss him greatly. And I guarantee you, because Wisconsin has great coaches, they're going to be attacking whoever is taking his place. and I'm not exactly sure. There's a couple of guys that I thought they were considering for that role, so we'll see what happens. But that's a big deal. But what's interesting is I also saw today that he is planning. So his hand surgery, he's expecting recovery to happen sufficiently so that he can play in the Senior Bowl, which is an NFL tryout, if you will, right? Like it's the Senior Bowl is coached by NFL coaches, and all the evaluation staffs are there and watching every practice. I mean, it's a big deal for somebody who wants to play in the NFL. So he's choosing to play in that game, which I believe Senior Bowl usually happens in January.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe I saw that he's still gonna be like on the sidelines in the game. He's still gonna be trying to be a leader on the defense and all that.
Right.
But of course, there's only so much you can do, not being out there to actually make plays.
Exactly. I mean, he's still not playing. So, but in this case, and given how our season has unfolded and everything else, the way it is today, I think what he's doing is going to become normal and not unexpected.
One piece of good news is that apparently Deontay Williams has been doing good on his injury recovery and maybe back for the Wisconsin game. So that would be a defensive player to help us. So let's hope that actually happens.
Yes. Well, but his backup has actually played pretty well. So that's good for, indicating that we have some depth, because obviously he's a senior and will be gone after this year. But it was good to see that we had a little depth there when he was out.
Mm-hmm. Back to the bad news. Running back Sevion Morrison has apparently left the team. Now, I don't really recognize his name much because I don't think he's gotten many touches this season, so it doesn't feel like a huge hit, but still not a great sign.
Right. It's a hit in that, again, that running back room, it was an enigma because we couldn't figure it out because there was so much talent there in that room in terms of what those guys were. This Sevion Morris left high school in Oklahoma as the leader in rushing yards, the leader in touchdowns, the leader in all-purpose yards. I mean, this guy he has every record in the state of Oklahoma. And oh, by the way, Oklahoma's produced more than its share of Heisman Trophy winners and great NFL quarterbacks, et cetera, over the course of the many, many years that program has existed. And so for someone to come from the state of Oklahoma with that kind of pedigree, and he never saw the field in Lincoln. So I don't know what his deal was. I don't know if it was an effort thing or if it was that our Coach Held, just didn't see eye to eye with him, and maybe there was an issue between those two guys. I just don't know. But he is a very talented football player that just never saw the light of day at Nebraska. So it was probably a good thing for him to leave. You know what I mean? Like he needed to go get a fresh start somewhere else and see what happens. I would love to have had him stick around and go with Coach once the Ryan Held got fired, but he apparently decided that there were still enough guys, in the log jam ahead of him. He didn't want to take the risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And on the previous podcast, we were kind of wondering what Scott was going to do about the fact that we didn't have any remaining offensive coaches, to help coach us in these last couple games. But pretty immediately after we recorded that, the news came out about who our interim coaches would be. We've got Steve Cooper for quarterback, Ron Brown for running back, Frank Verducci for offensive line, and Mike Cassanow for wide receiver.
Right. And those are all guys that have been in the program as analysts and other roles all season. And so they're not new guys coming in. And you might recognize the name Ron Brown, particularly because he coached with Coach Osborne, coached under Frank Solich, coached under Pelini, So he has been a fixture at Nebraska for many, many years. And Scott Frost brought him back when he rejoined the staff in a kind of a support role, for supporting the student athletes because Ron's such a high character guy. So, but every position he's ever coached, he's coached running backs before, tight ends, wide receivers, no matter who it was, they always were great. So I think that'll be good. And I think Ron understands, and I hope and expect to see a more logical and and reasonable running back rotation. You and I have spent a lot of time talking about what I think is just the complete stupidity and idiocy of how we rotated running backs during the course of a game, and it was just a head scratcher.
Yeah, yeah, it was surprising. You know, we've kind of had. It's been a little. It took them a while to kind of figure out who the proper guy was, that they wanted to be the go-to guy. But once they did, it was kind of a thing where we were giving it to him all the time. It felt like.
Right. Well, and yet it didn't make any sense based on uh, game performance. We had a guy who broke out against Northwestern, and then over the course of the next 4 games, he gets a total of like 15 carries, and hardly sees the field.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what's going on? He was a ghost. He had one big performance. He struggled in another game where he did fumble a ball one time, and all of a sudden he's a ghost again. And he has demonstrated some skills that no one else in our group has. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out in these last 2 games. Another interesting thing that was revealed was that Scott has said that he is not going to be the play caller for the offense going forward into next year. He's looking for an offensive coordinator who he can trust to handle that responsibility. He did mention that there wouldn't be any wholesale changes to the offense, so don't expect us to suddenly go to running the ball, 70% of the time. It's still probably going to be like Scott's offense, but I'm curious to see what the tweaks and adjustments that will be made there.
yeah, and that is going to be the hire that gets the most attention from the Nebraska fan base and probably the national media as well, is because Scott is going to be finding somebody that supposedly he's going to have enough confidence in that he can come in here and turn it over, right? He's not going to be calling the plays at all, is his intention. And that's going to be a hard transition for Scott.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I think one that he's consciously trying to make so he can, pay more attention to other facets of, his team, right? Trying to do the more CEO style of being a head coach, right?
Correct. That's his intention. We'll see how that plays out, though. I'm not convinced.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. The other interesting thing I saw was that some more details about his revised contract came out, and apparently October 1st, 2022 is the date where the price for, if we were to fire him, basically after that date, his price is cut in half from like 30 million to 15 million or whatever, the numbers are. And that's after the 6th game, which is Indiana. So it seems like that was kind of the deal that Alberts struck with him, was that, we'll do kind of a judgment of your new performance of this new staff after the 6th game, the midpoint of the season.
Well, that just gives the athletic department the option that if this is not trending well, for them to go ahead and start moving in another direction if they need to, rather than having to wait till the end of the season. But it's going to make it very difficult for Scott to hire quality assistants. He's basically going to have to hire guys that are willing to be mercenaries, who are going to take the money and run, so to speak, and try to be a part of a revival that then leads to something great, right? Be a phenomenal story that they'll run on ESPN, game day and stuff, when they talk about how Scott was on the brink and then turn it around in 2022, and now here we are, and Nebraska's competing for a Big Ten championship in 2024 or something like that. That's the hope, right? That's the hope.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as I mentioned on the previous podcast, I think Scott can also say, we're not expecting you to be competing for, Big Ten national championship, next year, right? Let's plan on with the goal of like getting to at least 7 wins, right? And obviously fans will still be frustrated, I'm sure, at the games that we lose and things like that. But if we're seeing the actual improvement on the field and actually being able to close out these close games that we've constantly lost under Scott, I think that'll be enough of an improvement to say, okay, we're moving in the right direction. Let's see what they can do in 2023.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah, it's not like Scott has to win every game, but he has to get to a bowl game, and he has to have measurable improvement in all aspects of his program. Recruiting, offense, defense, and particularly kicking game.
Right. For sure. So we talked a bit about, obviously we've talked a bit about the changes to our player base, who our interim coaches are, how Wisconsin performed against Northwestern. So now we can get into our proper preview of that Nebraska Northwestern game. And as I mentioned, I feel like our defense, although the lack of JoJo may dampen what we've been able to do so far this season, but I think we're good enough that we'll be able to definitely slow Wisconsin down. And the fact that they had, 3 turnovers in that game against Northwestern, a team that we actually beat more badly than they did, I feel like we'll be able to have some chances on through our defense, to be able to slow them down or maybe get a turnover or 2. My real question mark though is, can our offense, with an injured Martinez and all the issues we've had against way worse defenses, be able to get anything done against this defense, which is one of the best in the country?
Yeah, I don't see the path.
Yeah, it's at Wisconsin as well.
Right, it's at Wisconsin. They smell the blood in the water. They're going to be so fired up, and trust me, that coach wants to crush us. He wants to put a hurting on Nebraska. He wants to hang 50 on us plus. So they're going to make every effort to do that. And the thing about the turnovers is that's because they were trying to throw the football. They were trying to develop their team during the Northwestern game, in my opinion.
That's not actually true though, because there was the one turnover that was an interception, and that was like in the end zone. That was pretty bad. The other 2 though were both fumbles. One was off of the running back was running back to the quarterback to get the ball or whatever. And the handoff was screwy, and the ball just popped right out. So,
okay,
there might be something.
Well, that's
to
an execution error. Yeah, there might be, but that just never happens for Nebraska. In terms of turnovers, I just haven't seen that in years. It used to happen all the time when we had good defenses, but I haven't seen it. And even this defense, which has been good, has not necessarily been excellent at getting turnovers. They've just been okay. But I can guarantee you Wisconsin's going to try to drive it down our throats if they can. We'll see if we're able to bow up and stop them and force them to be maybe a little bit more one-dimensional, get them to 3rd and longs and that sort of stuff. I think the whole key for Nebraska will be having success early. We have to have some success early, both defense and offense, and of course, kicking game. We just have to play clean and effective early to make it look like we still can compete on the field. And if we can do that, then maybe the confidence builds. If things don't go well, I believe that the mental, again, we remain China dolls, and we're going to break China doll, and then the mental psyche is going to be a problem, and it'll spiral into ugliness.
Right. Well, it's the interesting thing though is that we are China dolls in that we cannot be clutch. We cannot come through when a game is close and we have a chance to win, and we always fall apart near the end, it feels like. But we've managed to remain competitive, with all these teams that are ranked higher than us, and we've kept talking multiple times on different podcasts about, oh, is this where Scott loses the team and they just give up, and we get blown out totally, and that
Right.
hasn't happened in
Right.
any of the games
It
so
hasn't.
far. So we're like, we're a China doll, but we're pretty tough as China dolls go, I guess you could say.
Okay. That you're right, Alex. Especially this season, because we have had a pretty salty defense. We've hung in there, right? And those guys have played hard. The effort has never been an issue. That's that. I will say that.
Right. Well, except maybe for, I forget which, was it the Minnesota game, like right after the game with Northwestern or wherever, where Scott said, yeah, we came out
Yeah.
flat, and it was like, what? How'd that
Yeah.
happen?
Right. That's not. Yeah. That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Uh, and and even if it was true, that should have never got out of the locker room. It should have never gotten into the media. Scott never should have mentioned it. The fact that players were mentioning it tells me that the coaches were mentioning it and recognizing it. Uh, to me, that's the kind of thing that absolutely positively cannot happen when you're in Nebraska's situation. There's no rightly situation where you can take a game off or take a game lightly and not be fired up to play. You're not good enough to do that.
Right. Very true. So giving a prediction for this game, I'm going to be probably a little more optimistic one, which is not uncommon here on the podcast. And I'm going to say that we lose, but that we play competitive, and that we do manage to maybe get some points early, and take advantage of this bye week. Hopefully we can do that when we didn't last time, and show that we've still got some fight left in us, and carry that into that Iowa game, who is a worse team than Wisconsin, and hopefully we actually can beat. So that's going to be my hope. So I'll say that we score, say, let's say it's 17 points for Nebraska, and Wisconsin has 24.
Okay. My prediction is that, well, there's a couple of ways this can go. Obviously, there are circumstances that have happened where a coach, or in this case, a group of coaches, gets fired, but the team is able to rally, and because of some leadership and a good culture, they're able to rise above it and play one of their best games, even in light of the negative circumstances. We have had 2 weeks, so you'd like to think that maybe they've had a chance to get healthy a little bit and get those guys fired up about the fact that, hey, we're Nebraska and we want to get better. But I don't believe that that particular alternative is going to happen. I think the opposite is more likely to happen. I think at some point during this game we are going to see that raise your hands in the air, wave the white flag, and concede that, okay, this season's shot. Unless things go really well early, like I mentioned earlier. So my prediction for a score is 38 Wisconsin, 13 Nebraska, and that'll probably include a couple of made field goals and 3 missed field goals. So Nebraska's going to move the ball on them, but then we'll miss 3 field goals, and but we won't have huge numbers because their defense is too good, and their defensive line is going to be eating Adrian alive, and Adrian won't do squat, and he'll end up making mistakes that will lead to some of those scores. So 38-13.
Okay.
Or worse.
Or worse. Got it. I've got 3 missed field goals written down here, so we'll see
Okay.
what comes of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then for week 12 of college football and the wider scheme of things, there are a couple interesting games. Wake Forest is playing against Clemson at home for Clemson. And Clemson's actually, or Wake Forest rather, is actually the higher ranked team there. They've been putting up some crazy scores here in recent weeks.
Yeah.
Do you think that Clemson buckles down and takes care of them, as they should? Or do you think Wake Forest will kick them while they're down, so as it were?
Well, this would be the year, and Wake Forest has definitely been playing well. But again, did Wake Forest just recently lost to North Carolina? Did they not?
They didn't lose last week. In week
No,
11.
but it was. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So here's the thing: Clemson has more talent, but Clemson doesn't have a quarterback who's playing and executing at a high level. And frankly, you need that. So I'm going to say that Wake Forest wins this game, but it ends up being a nail biter. I think it's going to be super tight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are we guessing a score on this one?
No, actually, we're saving that for the big game in the Big Ten this week.
Okay, very good. So, but I'll just say that I think Clemson loses, but it's close.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I'll go ahead and have some hope since it's at home. If it was out Wake Forest, I'd probably feel differently. But since it's at home, I'm going to say that it's close, but Clemson wins, and they dig deep and are able to maybe get a little bit of momentum going into the off season. Even though they'll go to a more minor bowl and a disappointing result for them instead of going to a national championship game. But hopefully they can take some positivity off of that into next year.
Alex, that's a really good take. Yours is probably way better than mine. Mine's a take built on frustration, watching Clemson play so piss poor this year. A team that we've both grown to respect watching over the years. Their quarterback play has just been so ragged. It kind of reminds me of Nebraska. So.
There you go. I don't know if you saw this in the Michigan game against Penn State, but there was a play where Penn State punted it off, and one of Michigan's guys who was like blocking a Penn State guy ran into the guy who was supposed to recover the punt, and so they just fell into a pile, and Penn State ended up getting stopping the ball right at the 1 yard line.
Yeah, I saw that. Yep, that was quite the play.
Yeah,
that was quite the play.
I was like, even Nebraska's not that bad. Yeah. And then Oregon's playing against Utah. Utah is ranked 24th in the country, so they're a bit down this year, but that's still a game that we've seen them pull the upset off against Oregon in the past. So we'll have to see if they can be the spoiler makers this year.
Do you happen to have the list of Pac-12 games in front of you? I was wondering who Arizona State was playing this weekend.
I'll do a quick search on that, I guess.
Yeah, I know it's an away game, but I thought it was Oregon. But you're telling me Oregon's playing Utah.
It's Oregon State.
Oh, it's Oregon State. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, that's Arizona State should win that one.
And then the big game, which is the one we'll give our prediction for, is, of course, Michigan State versus Ohio State. It is at home for Ohio State. But obviously, Michigan State's proven to be a tough opponent. And Ohio State's kind of, struggled in some games this year. So it is definitely doable, I think, for Michigan State if they can execute well and, not make mistakes. If they come out and, give up some early interceptions or something, I think Ohio State takes control and runs away with it. But if MSU can play clean, I think that they've got a pretty good shot to maybe pull out the upset.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Well, so my thought, and then we're going to come back around and give numbers, right? Is I think Michigan State is going to score some points on Ohio State. I will concede you that Michigan State will be able to move the football. They're going to be able to score some points. So I'm going to say Michigan State's going to score, let's say around 3 touchdowns and maybe a field goal, something like that. But I think Ohio State's offense is finally really finding itself. And this is a game at Ohio State. It's not in East Lansing. If it was in East Lansing, I'd definitely have Ohio State on upset alert. But since it's in Buckeye land, I think the Buckeyes show up and perform well on offense particularly and end up simply outscoring Michigan State. So it's going to end up being a little higher scoring game, but I'll go ahead and give you my number. I think it's going to end up being like 49-24.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. 49-24. Okay.
Well, Ohio State obviously winning.
Yes, I got that part. I'll go ahead and predict that Ohio State wins. But I'm going to predict that it's going to be much closer. That Michigan State will make it a dogfight down to the end. I'll go a little lower scoring and say that it ends up being Ohio State, let's say 38 to Michigan State 28. Yeah, let's go with that.
38-28, Ohio State wins.
Yes.
That's a good score. That's not that much more than mine, really, when you think about it. Mine's 49. I'm just adding 11 more points, so that's a couple of touchdowns, one less field goal. So
right.
Not a big difference. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I always view if you're within like 10 points of a team, then you played them pretty close versus if it's,
right.
14 or more,
yeah.
It's a little bit
21 or 24. Yeah.
Yep. I remember something you said to me very early on in my time of watching football was 3 scores was the magic number. If you're 3 scores ahead of your opponent, then you're in pretty good shape.
Right. Exactly. Yep. That's true. I still believe that.
Yep.
Okay. So I have done this out here outside. And what's incredible is, and maybe they've been doing this every night and I just didn't know it, but we have a bunch of fighter jets. We're fairly close to Luke Air Force Base, and the F-22s squadron is there. And I think they have some sound deadening things because there are planes that are just zipping by us and I don't hear them at all. Like they have no sound. And I saw 3 helicopters fly right over the top of us while I was doing the podcast. And I was wondering if it was going to disrupt us. Didn't hear them at all.
Oh, wow.
Totally silent helicopters.
Well, there we go.
And they're doing some kind of night thing.
Well, there you go. Some cool insights from you being outside as we close out this podcast.
Exactly.
Right. There we go. All right.
God bless America.
That's right. So if you out there enjoyed this podcast, you can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You also reach out to us if you search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can leave us a rating or review there. Let us know what you think of the podcast, what we can improve on, things of that nature. So thank you all out there for listening. And thank you, Dad, for joining me for this particular episode. And until next week, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.